Welcome to the Fiscal Fortress. Michelle Baoyu, a distinguished lawyer, and Eric Chung, a veteran hedge fund manager, deliver insightful commentary on finance and the law and actionable advice. The Fiscal Fortress, where wealth meets wisdom.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Eric, what are we going to chat about today?
There are two really important topics. The first is something that's really top of mind for me is the war in Israel. And we can get into it, but a lot of, just potentially serious things that could spiral out of control there. And also, I know you and I were talking before this recording that there's some changes in the law that could be a really big deal for people in Silicon Valley.
That's right. There's changes coming with the estate tax, and estate taxes is not usually what I have to talk to my clients about. But if the law changes and it becomes a lot more applicable, then there's going to be a lot of changes in the trust planning.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. But maybe I could go first, and we could talk a little bit about what's top of mind for me and
Sure.
the war in Israel. So what's happened, for those of people who haven't been following the news, is that Israel recently attacked Lebanon, and in fact, they've deployed ground forces, so meaning they've invaded Lebanon. And Lebanon is an ally of Iran, and Iran has counterattacked and fired hundreds of missiles at Israel. So this is a really big deal, and it's potentially a big escalation in the Middle East.
How has it affected the capital markets at home here?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So far, the stock market hasn't been going up, but it also hasn't tanked, which is a good thing. I think that the thing that everybody's worried about is that if this becomes a bigger deal, Michelle, then what'll happen is that this could affect the price of oil and could increase inflation in the United States. And we've seen how important inflation is in our economy, and how rising inflation, and when the federal government tries to counter that with increasing interest rates, how that is really bad for a lot of stocks and the stock market. So that's the thing that I'm worried about.
And in that instance, would you change your portfolio and the allocation of what you invest in?
The hedge fund, fortunately, we can do things that other people can't. So we typically will, if there's a big deal, like, to pick like an example a while back, like with COVID, we were able to short the market or to short specific stocks. And we've done a bit of that now. So we can do that to protect our partners. But I think your question is really like, if you're an everyday investor, what can you do about it? And I think the answer is to just watch for now. I think it might be premature to do anything right now. And in fact, I think a lot of long-time investors would basically say, do nothing. Like Warren Buffett would argue that you should do nothing because it's really hard to predict which direction the stock market would go. However, I would say, and my honest recommendation is, I agree with doing nothing, except if it turns out that the price of gas goes up and the Federal Reserve pauses the reduction of interest rates, or they hike interest rates. That's a really big deal. And in that situation, I would probably recommend that you call your financial advisor and just find out what you could do to manage that risk.
In terms of risk and just what's also happening back at home, there are elections that are going to come up shortly, and how that could impact the estate tax is a big deal. So I'll be a little more specific. Right now, the estate tax limit exemption for U.S. citizens is at 13.6 million, but in about a little more than a year's time, that law will change and it will expire, bringing down the exemption to $7 million per person, which means that it's going to drop by essentially half. But with new proposals coming in, that estate exemption could go even further to $3.5 million.
That's a big change. So does that mean basically that if somebody passes away and they want to pass on more than $3.5 million, that dollar for dollar, essentially Uncle Sam gets 55 cents of each dollar and the heirs only get 45 cents?
That is true. Right now, if someone were to pay a state tax, it's so two things currently. It's at a higher exemption level, which is 13.6 million, and the tax rate for estate tax is 40%. But if the law changes and that law is endorsed by Kamala Harris, then that exemption could drop as low as 3.5 million, and anything in excess of it would be taxed at 55%. So two big whammies.
That's huge. And I think you were also mentioning before we started recording this that, like, if you're really wealthy, those tax rates actually go up as well, right?
That's right. And so it's a really good time to call if you have an advisor, and just see if there needs to be any changes that need to be made, because at the end of the day, it is a very case by case analysis in terms of whether those changes in the tax laws would affect your planning.
Can you just get specific about the break points? Like I think you had mentioned before we recorded that over a certain threshold, like they're actually planning on increasing that tax rate even more.
That's right. So the reason for all these tax changes is because in our country, as we've read, there is housing is unaffordable for a lot of Americans, and so with the government's attempt to create more affordable housing, they have to increase revenues, and one of the ways they're going to do that is by increasing the revenues through estate tax, and so estate tax becomes a lot more relevant, and so there's going to be different thresholds. Anything under 3.5 million per person is going to be exempt from estate tax. But if a person has between 3.5 million to 13 million, then that estate tax rate will jump to 55%. But that isn't even the end of the story. For people who have more than 13 million, then the estate tax goes up to 60%, in addition to having to pay a base amount of $7 million. So it's 7 million plus an additional 60%.
Yeah, I mean, these are big numbers. Obviously, your accountant or your tax lawyer will have to kind of work out the specifics. But any way you cut it, it seems like this is a really, really big deal. And whether or not you're going to, vote for Republicans or Democrats, it's just worth noting that these are actual changes in the law that could impact us.
That's true. Anytime the government needs to increase its revenue, it means that we can expect higher taxes.
Okay. Really good discussion, Michelle. Next time, I'm hoping we can talk more about and get even deeper into changes in the law, because these things are very, very important for people who have accumulated wealth. And I'm looking forward also to talking about other investing topics.
Sounds good. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to my office. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video.
And also, I almost forgot to say that if you have any other questions, you can also post a comment in the comment section, and we'll do our best to address it in a future episode. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening.